morning. For those of you that I have not yet had the pleasure to have met, I am Dania Thafer. I'm the Executive Director at Gulf International Forum. I'm deeply honored to address such a distinguished global audience of scholars, researchers, and experts dedicated to advancing our understanding of the Gulf region at the Inaugural Gulf Studies Symposium. This is a testament of the Gulf's profound global influence and the growing significance of our forum in shaping that discourse. The core objective of the Gulf Studies Symposium is to advance and foster insightful analysis of the Gulf region. And we achieve this objective by conducting workshops strategically crafted to provoke substantive discussions and inspire scholarly contributions that enhance academic discourse surrounding this vital region. In our view, the Gulf region must be guided by a commitment to interdisciplinary collaboration, empirical research, and engagement and inclusivity. By embracing these principles, we can hope to generate insights and deep knowledge that not only deepen our understanding of the Gulf region, but also contribute to its continued prosperity, stability, and development. The Gulf region is undergoing profound transformations from economic diversification and technological innovation to shifting geopolitical alliances and social movements. As scholars, we have a responsibility to not only observe and analyze these changes, but also to actively contribute to the development of solutions and strategies that address the region's most pressing issues. I am hopeful that the Gulf Studies Symposium can play a meaningful role in fulfilling this task. We extend our sincere gratitude to our esteemed partners whose collaboration have been invaluable to the mission of the Gulf Studies Symposium. We're deeply thankful to our partners, the Gulf Research Center led by Dr. Abdullah Sagar and Dr. Ahmed Sagar, a pivotal organization at the forefront of shaping discourse and policy in the Gulf region. GRC is the pioneer of hosting workshop series focused solely on the Gulf, and so we're very pleased to have their partnership. Additionally, we would like to express our appreciation to Georgetown University's Center for Contemporary Arab Studies, a preeminent institution renowned for its expertise in the study of the Arab world that's under the exceptional leadership of Dr. Fida Adely. I find it incredibly fulfilling and enjoyable to be a part of their team. Also, I would be remiss if I did not thank our logistic team and Anas Al-Qaed, Coco Tate, and Anna Mosley, and also, let's not forget Sanya, who couldn't make it with us, who their tireless work and efforts and commitment to excellence is what made this event a success. We couldn't have done it without you. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Gulf International Forum's chairman of the board, Daniel Berkon, as the chief executive officer of Hellman International, a renowned leader of global security, logistics, and technology solutions. Daniel is a distinguished business leader that cultivates a culture of excellence, integrity, and collaboration. We are incredibly fortunate to have him at the forum, where his strategic leadership undoubtedly enriches our mission. Daniel?
Thank you for that gracious introduction, Dr. Dania. And good morning, all. It's with great pleasure and excitement that I welcome you to this Gulf Studies Symposium. So happy to be back here at my alma mater from a time back when I could still button my suit coat. It's a pleasure to have you here. This forum, which is organized by the Gulf International Forum, as well as our partners, the Gulf Research Center and the Center for Contemporary Arab Studies. We're so pleased to have you here this morning. And it's a real pleasure for me to stand in front of such a distinguished gathering of scholars dedicated to enhancing our understanding of the Gulf region. The Gulf Studies Symposium is a really pivotal moment for our organization and for the general policy and academic communities. Over the next 2 days, we have a unique opportunity to engage in meaningful dialogue, exchange insights, and explore ways to better understand key issues affecting the Gulf and its people. I'd like to echo Dr. Dania's thanks to our partners, the Gulf Research Center, particularly Dr. Ahmed and Georgetown University's Center for Contemporary Arab Studies, particularly Fida Adely, and the organizing committee whose hard work and dedication was essential to ensuring that this symposium could come to fruition. And lastly, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for your participation and contributions. I think together we'll ensure this symposium is a resounding success. If there's anything that we can do to make this week more impactful for you, please don't hesitate to let us know, and we hope that you really enjoy this symposium. I'm going to be followed by a video recording from the Dean of the School of Foreign Service, which is Dean Joel Hellman. So we'll look forward to hearing his words. Enjoy your week.
Hi, my name is Joel Hellman. I'm Dean of the School of Foreign Service here at Georgetown University, and I'm so pleased to welcome you to this Gulf Studies Symposium. I really wish I could join you personally, but you are meeting here on the Georgetown campus during our spring break, and I'm afraid I'll be traveling during that time. But I really did want to just spend a couple of minutes thanking you for engaging with us here at Georgetown University for this important symposium, and wishing you all success in the work that you're going to be doing. Let me start out, though, by thanking all those who really made this possible. We're very pleased that this is a joint effort between our own Center for Contemporary Arab Studies here at Georgetown University, the oldest center for the study of the Arab world in the United States, the Gulf International Forum, and the Gulf Research Center. And I know that the directors of these centers are here, and I want to give them a particular thank you, Dr. Dania Thafer, Dr. Fida Adely, and Dr. Ahmed Sagar. I want to thank you all for your partnership in making this happen. I also know that there are so many others who are participating in this multifaceted event. I understand there are, I see 65 papers being presented during the symposium, with people flying in from all corners of the world and joining online. That's a tremendous achievement to get so many people dedicated to understanding the Gulf and its place in the world. And I want to welcome you all here on this campus, as well as welcome those who are joining online. This obviously couldn't be a more important moment to study and understand both what's happening in the Gulf and the role of the Gulf nations in world events. For those of you and for this group that's been following the history, the politics, the economics, the social issues, this is a time of tremendous change, tremendous development, tremendous growth, tremendous ambitions across the Gulf. Not only as societies themselves are transformed throughout the Gulf countries, but as the Gulf countries redefine their role in international politics at a particularly fraught and difficult moment in international affairs. We see wherever you look, Gulf nations playing key roles as mediators, key roles as conveners in so many areas, trying to deal with conflicts that we're facing around the world. We see the Gulf countries being convening nations for issues like education, for issues like sustainable development, and so many others. It is so important for the Gulf nations to be able to play this role in this changing world, and using the strength, the capacity, and the ambition of these countries to play such a positive role. That's what you're going to be looking at during during this very interesting set of papers, discussions, panels for this Gulf Studies Symposium. I know that it will be a series of very, very fruitful and exciting discussions because there's so much to talk about, so much to engage on, and it is so consequential for where the world is now. So I want to wish you every success for an exciting day and set of discussions. I am looking forward to seeing and hearing the results of what you come up with through these discussions. And I wish you all success in this effort to really help us understand the Gulf and its place in the world. Thank you so much, and all the best to you.
Assalamu alaikum. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guest and honorable participant, good morning. It is with a great pleasure and enthusiasm that I stand before you today to welcome you in the Gulf Studies Symposium, organized in partnership between the Gulf International Forum, the Gulf Research Center, and the Center of Contemporary Arab Studies at Georgetown University. This gathering marks enormous occasion, bringing together individuals from diverse background, experiences, and expertise, united by the common purpose of advancing the depth of knowledge about the Gulf region. It is therefore wonderful to have everyone here with us. In the Gulf Research Center, we started the idea in an annual academic back in 2010 in Cambridge. Little did we know that this July we'll be holding our 14th meeting with interest, and participation stronger than ever. It is incredibly great to see many familiar faces here from the GRC meeting, including among us Dr. Abdullah Ba'aboud, who was at we consider the birth of the GRM back then in 2010. Also, Professor Naji Abi Abid, who directed several GRM workshops, as well as Dr. Sarah, who she will direct a workshop this coming July. Through GRM history, we have held more than 130 workshops with participation of over 3,500 people from all parts of the world. Until today, 56 books have been produced with enormous journal contribution and individual paper. When Dr. Dania, Thafer, approached us for cooperation in establishing an annual Gulf Studies Symposium here in Washington, we immediately thought that this was a great idea. The Gulf Studies field is broad and wide-ranging, and with all the development and advancement, but also continued geopolitically volatile and insecurity impacting our part of the world, the need for thoughtful and imaginative scholarship on the Gulf region is more important than ever. There should never exist barriers to exchange of knowledge, fostering connection and ability to contribute over before. There are no replacement for meetings such as this one, where people can exchange prospectively and truly connected and learn from others. As I mentioned, the Gulf Studies Symposium underscores the importance of the Gulf region, which continues to exist in a volatile environment marked by uncertainty across political, security, energy, economic, and social domains. Despite these many challenges, the GCC states are also firmly establishing themselves as important political and economic power brokers at the regional and international levels. Enormous development took place in the last 2 years, underlining the growing central role. From Saudi Arabia hosting the Arab League Summit to the major summit meeting between GCC country and United States and China respectively, to the re-establishment of the diplomatic ties between Saudi Arabia and Iran facilitated by China with some engagement from Qatar, Oman, and Iraq, and the successful hosting of the World Cup in Qatar and the COP Summit in United Arab Emirates. Over the course of our time together here, we will delve into discussion, engage meaningful dialogue, and explore solutions that have the potential to shape landscape of variety of topics and issues about the Gulf region, ranging from politics, security, economics, and energy, cultural issues. The Gulf Studies Symposium, another important step, further development of a better understanding of the Gulf region from a variety of perspectives. As a key thing to remember over the coming days, it's to be an open-minded, respectful, and to share different views with big respect. I am sure that as a result of that, we will enjoy enriching discussion, meaningful connection, and transformative insights. Before I reach my last part, I would like to thank Dr. Dania and her team. I would like to thank my team, Amna, Christine, who are physically with me here in Washington, Sania, Emko, Chris, who are not with us, but they are with us with their hearts. And each one who did have an input, Anas and your team as well. Before ending, I would like to thank you for being part of the Gulf Studies Symposium and enlarging the community even more. I look forward to the following debates at these meetings and seeing many of you at our GRM meeting in July 2024 in Cambridge, and again here in the GSS in 2025. Thank you very much. Allow me to introduce after me Dr. Fida Adely. She's Associate Professor Director in the Center of Arab Studies. She will be recording her speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and good morning. It's my honor to welcome you to this year's Gulf Studies Symposium. My name is Fida Adely, and I'm the Director of the Center for Contemporary Arab Studies and the Clovis and Hala Salam Maqsood Chair in Arab Studies. I wish I could be there with you today, but because it's our spring break, I'm actually in the Gulf at the moment, visiting, and I have the pleasure to visit Doha, Qatar, for the first time. I'm actually speaking to you from Georgetown, Qatar, from the campus there. And I'll say a bit more about that trip in a moment because I think it's relevant for my remarks here. But I want to start by thanking our partners and thanking the Gulf International Forum for their trust in us in hosting this event at Georgetown. So thanks to the Gulf International Forum and Dr. Dania Thafer, as well as the Gulf Research Center and Dr. Ahmed Saqar. And I want to say a bit more. Dr. Thafer is actually a member of our community as well. So she's both the mover and the shaker of the Gulf International Forum and making critical interventions into Gulf studies to that organization. But she's also been essential to our own program in Arab Studies, helping us to improve and expand our teaching and our research and our knowledge production about the Gulf. So I want to give a special thanks to Dr. Dania Thafer. And I want to say also that I'm here in Doha in part to also continue to build those relationships with institutions and organizations in the Gulf. Obviously, Georgetown has a long history and a presence in Qatar. But this is my first trip here, and I'm here, and I'm a scholar of education, and the Qatar and other countries in the Gulf region are at the center really of some important developments around educational innovation and development. I've had the pleasure in just the last few days to visit Qatar University. I spent the day at Qatar University there, meeting with colleagues there. Today at Georgetown University in Education City. I also had the pleasure to meet with folks at the Qatar Fund for Development and learn about the work that they're doing all over the world to ensure access to quality education for young people around the world. And so there's much to be learned from the developments and the innovations that are happening here in the region. And that's one of the main reasons that I'm here at this time. I want to wish you all an engaging and productive exchange of ideas. Again, I really wish I was with you there in person. but I look forward to reading the fruits of your exchanges and the publications that come out of this important symposium. And I hope, inshallah, that in the future, I'll be able to participate in future symposiums and learn more about the important critical scholarship happening in these areas. I also want to give a thank you to all of the staff of each of our organizations who've been critical to making this event possible, and wishing you a very fruitful time at Georgetown. Please enjoy your time on our campus. And again, I wish I was there with you in person.
So it was a pleasure hearing from Dr. Fida Adely, who I have the distinct pleasure to work with on a regular basis. Without further ado, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Saud bin Abdullah Attiyah, Deputy Undersecretary for Economic Affairs at the Ministry of Finance. He is a distinguished leader with a track record of excellence, having previously directed the Economic Policies and Research Department and overseen the Public and Private Partnerships Department. His expertise is widely recognized. Dr. Al-Attiyah's impactful contributions extend beyond his current roles, as evidenced by his board positions at the Qatar Postal Service Company and his chairmanship at the Economic Diversification and Private Sector Development Division. He demonstrates a commitment to advancing Qatar's business environment and sports development initiatives. With a doctorate of business administration from the Swiss Business School, Dr. Al-Attiyah brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise about Qatar's economy and Gulf economies. Without further ado, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, it's given me a great pleasure to deliver speech in the opening ceremony of the Inaugural Gulf Studies Symposium today. I am also glad and honored to be here in Georgetown, in that historical place. Since we are seeing a major shift in global politics and economy, GCC economies are trying to position themselves to be more active participants in the global economy, in addition to their long-standing role as a trusted partner for hydrocarbon resources. Also, all GCC countries are charting their visions and roadmap in this direction. In my presentation today, I will give a highlight on these visions, and I will elaborate more on the Qatar experience in developed the 2030 vision and as well as the NDS national development strategies. Anyone dealing with GCC economies hear a lot about national visions, development strategies, initiatives, projects, events being hosted in this region like in a daily basis. Qatar was one of the first adopters of a comprehensive vision document in 2008. Common themes being replicated in most of these visions documents include human development, vibrant society protection, vibrant society protecting also the cultural values, attraction of high-skilled workforce, and a selection of a search of more effective government. Since it is the largest country in GCC region, there is a lot of talks about the Saudi Arabian Vision 2030 and the initiatives being underpinning this vision. Saudi authorities define the Vision 2030 as creating a vibrant society that serves as the foundation for a thriving economy and ambitious nation. Again, vibrant society, social development, forward society, high ambitions, exclusiveness, etc., are some of the words that we see frequently in the Vision's document. These words should not be seen only as a simple phrases. Instead, these represent the drive for social and cultural change required to develop a capable population and labor force to compete in the new skill-intensive world area. In the economy front, the most important aspect of these visions appears to their substantial focus on economic and revenue diversification. GCC countries are focusing in industries which are proven to be successful in the region, such as manufacturing, logistics, tourism, and financial services. So what is the drive behind the focus on economic development and diversification? As we all know, GCC countries' main contributions to the global economy has been through oil and gas sector in the last decades. This created huge reliance on oil and gas revenue for public budget. As per IMF calculation, $80 per barrel oil prices balanced public budget. Expected decline in the demand for hydrocarbon energy sources in the long term due to climate change and development of alternative fuels will make balanced public budget more difficult for some of the GCC countries, especially for ambitious plans and projects that have been taken on their visions. On the social front, employment needs of growing young population and reliance on budget sector to provide jobs are not sustainable. Technological change and digitalization of a global economy also make the need of diversification and an urgent requirement. However, these diversification efforts do not mean that GCC countries are ignoring energy sector. There is a push to increase, actually, the production capacity in the major exported countries. There are also efforts to diversify energy mix, including large-scale solar energy projects. From Qatar's perspective, we see natural gas as a transition energy source. Therefore, we expect that demand will increase for LNG in the near future. Based on this understanding, Qatar is proceeding with an LNG expansion project to raise the LNG production capacity from 77 to 142 million tons per annum before the end of this decade. It's almost more than 60% of the current capacity. Qatar has undergone remarkable economic development over the past few decades. GDP at current prices increased more than 10 times since year 2000. Qatar has strategically implemented economic reforms and diversification to ensure sustainable growth and resilience in the face of global economic challenges. As of 2022, 63% of the GDP is composed of non-oil and gas sectors. Qatar can balance its budget with an oil price of under $50 per barrel, which is the lowest price for balanced budget among the other GCC countries. All these positive developments lead to stable investment grade rating from major rating agencies, where recently Moody's upgraded Qatar to AA2 due to a strong LNG demand and fiscal improvement. And this places Qatar on par with countries like France, South Korea, and one level above UK. It is a well-known fact that Qatar's outstanding growth story started with commercializing of the natural gas resources through LNG technology. Qatar Energy played a key role in attracting foreign investors, establishing partnership to develop large gas fields. Revenue from LNG started to flow into the economy in early 2000s, which led the management to think about a better utilization of these revenues for long-term development objectives. In 2008, Qatar National Vision was adopted with a focus on 4 pillars: human development, social development, economic diversification, and environment. So to achieve this vision, Qatar prepared 3 national development strategies, NDS1, NDS2, and recently we launched the NDS3. For NDS1 was focused on creating and developing national champions in key sectors. Qatar National Bank, largest bank in the Middle East. Qatar Airways, world best airline according to Skytrax. Ooredoo, a leading international communication company with customer base of more than 100 million across the Middle East, North Africa, and Southeast Asia. Qatar Investment Authority, QIA, one of the largest sovereign wealth funds. All these national champions being created and grow during NDS1. One of the most important achievements of Qatar's development story is establishment of Qatar Foundation. Today, Qatar Foundation hosts several international universities, campuses such as Georgetown, Carnegie Mellon, Weill Cornell, Northwestern, and HEC Paris, one of the leading business schools as well in the world. QF also a house of innovation and technology through several research centers such as Qatar Science and Technology Park, which are hosting and funding a big number of individual researchers and firms from all around the world. After establishing this basis, Qatar focused on delivering the key urban infrastructure during NDS2. Infrastructure assets such as Ahmed International Airport, which is rated as a best airport in the world, Ahmed Port, with a large scale of containers and cruise, as well as state-of-the-art metro network, which were developed during this phases, facilitated the successful delivery of 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar. This was the first time that a Middle East country and a Muslim majority nation hosted the World Cup, which attracted more than 1.5 million visitors during 1 month time frame, with all fans witnesses that this is the best World Cup ever. Since 2008, Qatar's economy has experienced a solid 5% average annual growth. In January 2024, we just kicked off the NDS3, which Qatar focusing on building sustainable future. The main key pillars of NDS3 include staying as a global leadership in high energy through expansion of LNG export capacity, developing competitive specializing cluster for long-term sustainability, building a leading environment for business and private capital, fostering innovation to develop long-term specializations and address national challenges. This is my last slide. Development of NDS3 was based on a comprehensive assessment of past progress and lessons learned from the Qatar's 2 previous national development strategies. The assessments highlighted the need of NDS3 to be more transformative in accelerating progress in several key areas of development, specifically adopting and implementing required policy reform. Furthermore, several areas of improvement were identified related to the execution of previous strategies. Regarding the economic development diversification, we identified 2 main outcomes: sustainable economic growth, adopting a sustainable growth model to transform into a competitive, productive, diversified, and innovative economy. Fiscal sustainability, strengthening the long-term stability, health, and resilience of the government budget and its balance sheet. In terms of the sectors, we have selected 3 growth clusters: manufacturing, logistics, and tourism, as well as 3 enabling sector: information technology, financial services, and education. One of the key lessons we learned was producing specific numeric targets and defining required reforms and initiatives to reach these targets. Therefore, we have set ambitious but achievable targets and identified stakeholders responsible for delivering these targets. Some of our targets are achieving 4% GDP growth rate, attracting $100 billion FDI, and maintaining a fiscal balance of 5.5% of GDP. To implement effective reforms and achieve these targets, GCC countries need to work closely with international community. As a Qatar, we are welcoming you to help and to be part of the journey through research, development, and investment partnership. Thank you very much.
Gives me great pleasure to greet all of our guests, distinguished guests, people, researchers, students, and all the people that are going into this really groundbreaking symposium. Just one personal issue is I first set foot in the Gulf as a Foreign Service officer a very, very long time ago. I won't say how many long times ago it was, but at the time I remember the Foreign Service Institute was having a great deal of difficulty finding anything for us to read that was of any value whatsoever to learn about the Gulf. So this is a huge step forward, very important for my country and very important to the world. We have today a group of distinguished academics who will talk to us about how the entire field of studies of the Gulf region has changed. I'm sure you all know most of them, so I'll just go through this very briefly. Dr. Dania, we've already heard, the Executive Director of the Gulf International Forum. Dr. Ahmed Sagar, Vice President of the Gulf Research Center, from whom we have heard. Dr. Michael Harb is Professor of Political Science at Georgia State University Middle East Center. We'll talk about the literature on governance and economics. And finally, Dr. Courtney Freer, Senior Non-Resident Fellow at Gulf International Forum and Visiting Professor at Emory University College of Arts and Sciences. We are running a little bit late, so I will occasionally be rude if anyone goes on too long. Thank you very much. Well, Dr. Dania, you're first on.
Okay. I get the pleasure to discuss the developing literature on international relations of the Gulf countries. And I will not be able to touch upon everything, but I'll touch upon like key points that I think are relevant to the current geopolitical environment. The Gulf states are currently at a crucial juncture, contending with the intricate dynamics of multipolarity, which is a major factor in reshaping power dynamics and driving state behavior. It has prompted the recalibration and the distribution of power, causing increased levels of autonomy, a diversification in alliances, and trends of regional integration. And these shifts have also led to strategic hedging for both the small states and also, interestingly, the emergence of regional middle powers in the Gulf. In international relations, and specifically Gulf studies, I think many of you are aware that multipolarity consists of a geopolitical structure characterized by the presence of multiple significant powers or centers of influence within the Gulf region. Unlike unipolar or bipolar systems where one or two dominant powers hold sway, multipolarity involves a more complex distribution of power among several actors, including the Gulf states. And also regional powers such as Iran, Turkey, and Israel. In the context of great power competition, the Gulf region serves as a critical theater where major powers such as China, the US, Russia, compete for influence through various means, such as economic investments, security presence, and diplomatic alliances. Understanding these dynamics in Gulf studies is essential for analyzing how power is distributed and manifests in different forms in the region. And with these system-level changes in international relations, the Gulf states have increased in strategic autonomy, making them able to act independently, aligning decisions with its own interest, and reducing reliance on, I would say full reliance, not total reliance, on external actors. The GCC states have pursued varied strategies to navigate their regional politics independently and insert their global influence. We've seen that, again, as I mentioned, diversifying alliances, seeking out economic relations globally through several means, including economic statecraft, and engaging in regional and international mediation efforts, to name an example. Small state security is a traditional area of Gulf studies that also covers strategic economy, among addressing many other strains of literature focused on Gulf studies. And it explores the unique challenges and strategies that smaller states face in safeguarding their sovereignty and national interests amidst external threats or regional instabilities. In addition to the traditional small state security literature, and perhaps an area that could challenge some of the assumptions in small state literature, is the new emerging literature on the Gulf focused on middle powers. It explores the Gulf states as a possible middle power, given they have recently played a role in shaping regional dynamics, addressing challenges, and participating actively in international affairs. The Gulf states possess a substantial amount of economic resources and diplomatic leverage, allowing them to exert influence and contribute to the geopolitical landscape of the Gulf. As the ongoing Gaza war rages, the trajectory of literature assessing regional integration and normalization seems poised for a notable shift. As a new generation of scholars in Gulf study emerges, the political memory of the Gaza war becomes increasingly significant. These scholars, hailing from diverse backgrounds, are likely to explore the collective trauma associated with witnessing the sheer brutality of the war and its intersection with issues of identity, representation, and power. Critical theory is anticipated to play a prominent role, and which I've said this before, in examining the consequences of the war, particularly in critiquing the role of the West in perpetuating or exacerbating the conflict, a sentiment often echoed by individuals and thought leaders from the Gulf region. Another literature that will address the notion of regional integration between the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, and this usually addresses Iran, Turkey, and also Israel. But given the Gaza war, Israel represents a topic of considerable complexity within the realm of Gulf studies and the recalibration of core security concerns in the region. While some GCC states and Israel have shared some common interests, especially in the realms of security and economic development not too long ago, they were perceived as strategic assets aimed at mitigating Iran's influence. However, based on the input of thought leaders in the region, the Gaza war seems to have caused a reshuffling of security priorities, with Gulf states beginning to view Israel as a security liability and a moral burden. This shift in perception stems from the belief that Israel has strengthened Iran's appeal and sway in the region. Additionally, there's apprehension that deeper integration could possibly backfire in terms of their own populations. And we've seen different responses from Gulf states and from that perspective. Added to the equation of integration is a renewed sense of urgency for a two-state solution, now perceived to be intimately tied to regional stability. Therefore, there's really much to unpack in terms of the study of regional integration in addressing common threats, managing intra-regional rivalries, and promoting stability in the Gulf and the broader Middle East. I really only touched the surface of Gulf studies literature, addressing some of the most pressing geopolitical issues. Perhaps we can, if there's enough time, have more discussion about it in the Q&A session. Thank you.
Dr. Sagar.
Hi again. Okay. So it will be two parts. The first part will be looking at the GCC firmly establishing themselves in the global diplomacy, and the second will be the regional de-escalation effort by Saudi Arabia. So there is increased confidence in the GCC state to promote de-escalation in the region. The GCC states defining their own path that will less be reliant on the West. The Western policy circles and academia have to accept the fact that the Gulf is also ready to challenge the Western narratives. In the West, they complain about the GCC state balancing their relationship. This is because the West did not listen to the GCC concern in the past and continues to pursue politics that are not in line with what the region needs. For the Gulf and the Kingdom, the priority is to end the current crisis in Gaza, focusing on a ceasefire, to an Israel withdrawal from Gaza and humanitarian aid access Gaza. The region firmly convinced that the only path to security, stability of the region, including Israel, is to the establishment of Palestine state. The GCC preferred partner remains the US and Europe, but both are doing not good job, and they are pushing the GCC to look somewhere else. The GCC have shifted, pursuing their own self-interest, seeking economics opportunity in Asia, building partnership with countries like China and India. This should not be seen as a replacement, but as a complementary to the relation of the GCC states that they already have. The binary, either way, it's either us or against us. I don't think it works anymore. The second part will be about the regional and escalation effort by Saudi Arabia. The diplomatic contact between Saudi and Iran and Saudi has in fact incentivized with the Iranian president visiting Riyadh twice, and I think the talk will help to stabilize the region. In February 2024, the Kingdom hosted a ministerial confab summit in Riyadh with the attendance of the foreign affairs of Egypt, Jordan, UAE, Qatar, to advance the Arab stance regarding the Gaza crisis. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, as the P5 did meet with a global country from the Security Council to try to push them to do something in regards to the crisis in Gaza. The Kingdom has also hosted the Arab Islamic Summit to mobilizing Arab and Islamic partner to discuss pathway forward, provide to support international humanitarian relief efforts. The summit included the first meeting between Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and the Iranian president back then. The Kingdom has expanded the role of regional, which includes advocate foreign nations and including mediation effort to broker and to reach a result for the ceasefire. In September 2003, also the discussion that took place between the Houthi and the Yemeni government with the full support of Saudi Arabia to reach peace is going well, and we hope peace will take place soon. Saudi Arabia also hosted in Jeddah back then a meeting regarding the Ukrainian crisis in 2023, attended by the advisor of the UN as well as 30 countries, receiving President Zelensky. Also, in the last few days shows that Saudi Arabia would like to play a peace role to end the current crisis in Ukraine. Today, the driving force behind Saudi Arabia foreign policy is the success of Vision 2030. The success is conditional to a stable and cooperative, regional, environmental, and diversifying partnership. To understand the Saudi current foreign policy observer, we must look into the Kingdom where a new story is being told. It is a story of renewal, prosperity, and enhanced quality of life of its citizens, those that they are in the region. And it is important to listen to what Saudi official say and what they read in their statement, instead of taking some of the false information that's been provided by media right and left. Yeah, that would be it. Thank you very much.
Dr. Herb, yes.
So I'm going to offer a few brief remarks on governing structures and political economy in the region, how it is developed in the past, and challenges for the future. I have also been doing this for a little while. 30 years ago, I was writing my dissertation, and it was the decision to write on the Gulf, especially the smaller Gulf states back then, was it was a niche concern amongst those who studied the comparative politics of the Middle East. It was, I don't think I was viewed as being really remarkably strange for doing this, but it was something that people usually didn't do. Usually people wrote on Egypt or Lebanon. Today, of course, it is entirely different. I mean, as we can see from this conference, there is an enormous amount of excellent scholarship on the Gulf. And this has paralleled the rise of the Gulf in international affairs especially, so that the role of Qatar, for example, in international politics today is something that is just entirely different from how it was in the past. But in terms of comparative politics and political economy, I do see some challenges. I spent some time recently reading through the literature on authoritarian regimes in comparative politics generally to see how this interacts with and informs the study of Gulf politics. And it was a little bit disappointing. I mean, there is a great deal more interest in the Gulf. The Gulf countries are much more prominent, but it is remarkable the degree which in the comparative politics generally, the Gulf is seen as a place with oil. And the oil explains all of what is going on. And this is not very satisfactory. I think there's some reasons for the difficulties that the larger comparative politics literature has with dealing with the Gulf. The Gulf isn't, there are some distinctive aspects to the political economy and governing structures of the Gulf. They are monarchies. There is an enormous, well, there is in some cases a lot of per capita oil income, in other cases an extraordinary amount of per capita oil income. And in terms of political economy, there are extraordinarily distinctive labor markets in the Gulf, which just don't fit into people's understandings of the development, political economic developments. And so these aren't, I mean, it doesn't make the Gulf exceptional, but it does make it so that it doesn't really fit that well into comparative politics theorizing. The other problem, frankly, is that there just aren't very many Gulf states. And a lot of the literature is quantitative. It is large N, and the Gulf just falls out. And it's really sort of lamentable, but to speak, to be heard in that literature, it helps to have some sort of large N regression analysis at the end. And it feels a lot like studying the Gulf and really understanding it, which is what we do, right? There's been an enormous amount of work on how oil impacts politics and how the political economy of the Gulf works by scholars who study the Gulf. And there's been a nuanced appreciation for how oil affects politics, the governing structures in the Gulf, and the political economy of the Gulf. And that includes also an understanding of the differences between the Gulf states. So to speak of the smaller three richer per capita states in the Gulf, Qatar, Kuwait, and the UAE, they have developed in really quite different directions in many ways. So even amongst this small group of countries that share a lot in common, especially historically, there is a lot to be explained in how they've developed in different paths. But when you try to then, I had a colleague who asked me in the conversation in the hallway, he said, "What are you working on, Mike?" And I described something, and he just said, "Oh," and I said, "It's going to be on Kuwait." And he's like, "It's going to be generalizable, right?" And I said, "Yeah, I hope." But I mean, there is this sort of idea that it is supposed to be generalizable to the rest of the world, and it's hard. And I mean, this is just the challenge that I face in my work, and I think many of us face. It is hard to study the Gulf states, especially the smaller Gulf states, and make it generalizable, find generalizable lessons to the rest of the world. I don't think it's impossible, but it is certainly a challenge that we face. So thanks for the opportunity to make remarks, and I look forward to the rest of the conference.
Dr. Fear, you're the list.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me at what I'm sure is the first of many successful Gulf Studies Symposia that will bring us back to DC to talk about the region that we work on. I've been asked to talk about the development of the literature on the Gulf related to political Islam and nationalism. And I think it's worth reflecting before I get there just how much this literature has developed over the past many years. I remember when I started studying the Gulf, an undisclosed number of years ago, in a comparative politics of the Middle East class, we had 1 week about the Gulf. And the reading that we did, you can probably guess, was about rentier state theory. And that was it. And now, if I were to teach that same class today, there's so much more literature that we can draw upon, produced by many people in this room. And so we're fortunate that our field is growing. And I think in general, from rentier state theory through to literature on small states and the prevalence of soft power and the Western security umbrella, there's been an academic tradition of analyzing Gulf studies through regionally predetermined lenses, pointing in one way or another to this type of Gulf exceptionalism that Dr. Herb mentioned. And there is value in this. However, at the same time, as time passes and as Gulf states establish themselves more firmly in the broader regional stage and within the international order, behaviors are growing increasingly similar to other global powers, rather than merely punching above their weight, as the once ubiquitous headline put it. To be sure, several theoretical frameworks and concepts mobilized to analyze the domestic, regional, and international levels of Gulf politics have already sought to build bridges between this region and other regions. Literature on hedging as a small state strategy, for instance, or the work on monarchical resilience. Looking at the level of domestic politics and society, however, there's been a little less of this kind of bridging work, and I think we see this especially linked to work on political Islam and nationalism. I think what we're seeing now, however, is a flourishing of academic work on the Gulf within conversations about nationalism, Arab nationalism, and Islamism. In a very small way, my own work on the Muslim Brotherhood in the Gulf states has tried to do this, has tried to bring the Gulf into broader conversations about political ideologies that have a mobilizational capacity. And my new book, sorry, I wouldn't be a good academic if I didn't plug my new work. My new book on the mobilizational capacity of ideology in Kuwaiti parliament also hopefully pushes this along. But this speaks to a much broader trend, I think, in Gulf studies that includes many scholars from the Gulf, people like Talal al-Rashid and Wafa al-Sayeg, just to name a few. And I think that many of us feel that there's been a bit of a gap in the literature on the pull of ideological politics in the Gulf more generally. It's as if ideologies that influence political activity elsewhere in the Middle East somehow don't travel to the Arabian Peninsula. And I think a discussion of ideological or other perhaps realpolitik drivers of Gulf domestic politics and foreign policy is relevant to our understanding both of the Gulf as a region, but also to our understanding of these ideologies themselves. What more can we learn about Islamism, for instance, or nationalism if we include Gulf states in our consideration of broader ideological trends? Considerable English language scholarship focused on the Arabian Peninsula has viewed the region through the lens of security, energy, or regime politics. And while all of these are undoubtedly important topics, today, again, as I've mentioned, we're seeing this development of scholarship on the historical and present-day roles of domestic political and social actors in the Gulf states. When it comes to broader examinations of international relations, most literature on the Arabian Peninsula ignores the potential role of domestic politics in society and instead has often linked strategies abroad to energy or security concerns. And I think that we can start having conversations about the extent to which domestic politics matters when we talk about foreign policy agendas in the Gulf and in other regions of the world. How do Islamism and nationalism play into regional decision-making and international decision-making? And as we see a combination of new dynamics emerging, the rise of more confident Gulf nationalisms, greater GCC cooperation, we've also seen greater foreign policy independence and activism on the global scene, which has been noted by some of the previous speakers. And this is a perfect time then to reassess the extent to which these states are either regarded as or truly are exceptional in the ways that ideology influences domestic and foreign policies, and also in the way that they act on the global stage. Will we see, for instance, a revival of pan-Arabism? Do regional fault lines exist in the Gulf in any unique way that they don't in other parts of the Middle East? Broader intellectual histories, and particularly linking the Gulf to other parts of the Middle East, I think is one avenue that's becoming increasingly important that I've referenced. Work done by many people in this room and across the Gulf states contributes to our understanding of Islamism and nationalism in the Gulf, two forces that I believe have very real political and social influences, but often have been left out of our discussions about more macro politics and macro level changes on the global level. The Gulf has been treated with exceptionalism in many ways, as has been noted. And I think that today a great deal of work being produced inside and outside of the Gulf is questioning this and bringing the Gulf also into broader conversations with other Middle East powers, other global powers as well. The Gulf will, of course, remain distinctive for a variety of reasons. Its oil wealth, strong monarchies, shared history and tradition, relations with the United States. And that shouldn't be lost as we think comparatively about the ways in which the Gulf fits into broader understandings of the Middle East and of the world. Fascinating work about the varieties of Islamist movements or about the rise of nationalism across the Gulf is emerging, and I'm really excited to see what will come next for Gulf studies and for our relationship both with Middle Eastern studies more broadly and with the various disciplines on which we work separately. And this symposium is really a perfect place for these discussions, fostering interdisciplinarity and also cooperation across scholars from around the world. So thank you so much for having me.
We have a short time remaining for questions. I can't see very clearly, but I understand that there's a microphone set up someplace out there. Okay, good, thank you. I'm going to abuse, as usual, the position of moderator to ask a question that has intrigued me for a long time. As I said, very little research was done in the Gulf six decades ago. Today, all the research what little research was going on then was being done by foreigners, talking basically to the British and a few other people. The research is now coming out of the Gulf as well. Does it have a different emphasis? Are they more concerned, for example, in the Gulf about national identity rather than great regional issues, or do great regional issues preempt or are greater than the national identity type of research? To any one of our panelists.
I'm thinking about Ghanem Najjar right now, who is a Kuwaiti political scientist who wrote a really excellent dissertation, but not 60 years. It wasn't 60 years ago, but he was one of the first. Well, he is still a professor at Kuwait University, and I think that there was back then, there were a number of scholars in the Gulf when there was, when there were the first wave of Gulf citizens to go to Western or universities in general and came back and published excellent works, which I think that a lot of the themes that, there wasn't nearly as much of it, but a lot of the themes that they touched on back then, Khaldun and Aqib and Ghanem Najjar and others, I study Kuwait a lot, so I think about Kuwaitis here. But I think a lot of those themes are still being carried forward today. What is probably different is the degree of that we've been already talked about some today, the degree to which the Gulf views itself as no longer just sort of under the security umbrella Great Britain and then the United States, but standing alone and forging its own path in terms of, especially in terms of international relations. This is different for sure.
I can't see, are there questions over, gentleman over there? Could we get a microphone? Yeah.
Good morning. I'm Banafsheh Kainush. I'm a director of actually the geopolitics workshop here. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. I want to welcome especially Dr. Ahmed Saud, and I wish Dr. Abdullah was here. Your center hosted me when I came to Saudi Arabia, so with deep gratitude. I have two questions actually for you, Dr. Saud, and for Dr. Dania Thafer. The first one, speaking of strategic autonomy, I wonder, how do you foresee the Gulf countries exercising it in different election cycles here in the United States? So in other words, if we were to have a new president here in the United States, would that in any way, and if so, how impact the concept of strategic autonomy that you touched on for the Gulf countries? A second question, which is kind of related again, is the agency that you, Dr. Saud, referred to, I think, implied that countries like Saudi Arabia wish to have and are pursuing in bringing about change in the fate of their own countries. So to that end, what does that mean for Saudi-Israeli relations moving forward? Thank you.
Okay, should we answer, or you want to take more questions? Right, okay. Well, thank you very much for that intriguing question. And I think everyone this year will be kind of on the edge of their seats to see what happens in the presidential election that will occur in November. And I think it's quite interesting when we talk about strategic autonomy of the Gulf states. From the view of the Gulf states, as many of us are aware, that they see a declining role of the U.S. And not only that, but also the post-Arab Spring era, where major capitals in the region fell, and there's a huge vacuum that the Gulf states had to fulfill. And those two, in confluence, really affected the view of how the Gulf states saw themselves and increased their strategic autonomy, with also an increased level of leadership and responsibility in dealing with many new affairs in the region. Another issue was the Ukraine war, in which increased their leverage in petro-diplomacy, and that is another layer that caused more strategic autonomy for the Gulf states. And it will really be dependent on how this upcoming election will come out. And I'm not sure if there's going to be a huge change in terms of the major issues in the region, like, for example, the Gaza war, if we went from President Biden to President Trump. As we know, as stated in the national security strategy of the U.S., is very much about giving Israel ironclad, that was the term, support. And so I think that would not change dramatically what's the key issue that the region is facing today. And so I guess my perception is that the Gulf states would try to take on a larger role in trying to address the issue, although I think the framework in addressing this issue also has been it has been tackled in a way where there's kind of meetings with other larger players in the region and the global community. But it'll be quite interesting to see what happens with the new president, depending if we do have a new president, actually. And perhaps there could be a change when it comes to relations with Iran. I mean, we saw Trump was very aggressive and maximalist in how he dealt with Iran. I think Biden shifted gears as he saw there was no hope for the JCPOA, but I think he's less hawkish in his views in terms of Iran, and I think that will have implications in the Gulf region And this also is part of the reason that Gulf states have engaged Iran more closely now. And I see that actually increasing regardless of who gets elected.
Okay. Regarding, I just want to attach on the Ukraine, then I will go back to your question about the normalization. Just an example about the GCC policy regarding Ukraine. We did not take a side, it's either with or without. No, we wanted to be in the side of to make them reach peace. Okay, we're against aggression. We condemn what Russia did in going into Ukraine, but also we understand the Russian national security issues. So whether Ukraine will join NATO, will not, and talks could solve the issue. The shocking thing for me, okay, now it's almost 2 years plus, and there was not a single initiative to appoint an envoy for peace. So it's like they want the war to continue until Russia, either their economy collapse or, I don't know, more lands need to be taken from Ukraine. I don't know, it's slightly, I always have these questions in my mind, why there is no an envoy for peace yet? Until when do we have to wait? Regarding your question about the president election, whether Trump or Biden, just because people usually accuse that Saudi would prefer a non-democrat president, but this is not the case. When our oil base were attacked, Donald Trump was the president, and the reaction was not there. So we're fine with anyone in power. We think we could deal with any. Saudi normalization. Okay, it's a big topic. Our crown prince was asked about it pre-October 7 in Fox News, and he said, yeah, there are talks did take place, and the Americans are pushing, and it will be beneficial for everyone. However, each one should understand that it is not an ultimate goal. It's a way for the Palestinians to take their state. The first condition is Palestine needs to have a recognized state. Okay. Then any other pluses that might happen, the nuclear program, the cultural, economical, you name it, it's all adds on. But if the first condition is not met, then the talk is postponed. And I know there are some reports that came out that Saudi will welcome normalizing if there was a talk that will lead, okay? And this is wrong. Saudi was clearly, they said clearly there has to be a state, then normalization could take place with discussion, and the Palestinian, they have to talk with the Israeli regarding their two states. We will not interfere to say this size, big size, small size. No, it's not our interest that Palestine has a state, period. Then everything could follow onwards. And it's for the stability for everyone, for the safety of everyone, for the safety of our kids, for the coming generation. Why do we need to live in that problematic issue that's been going on for 75 years and there is no real solution? And the only one capable to push for such a thing is the United States of America. This is why we always, seek that, there will be more pressure to stop what's going on, to obviously release the hostage, to have, all these. But with what we are seeing now, how it continues, I don't see, much progress in normalization.
I fear that we've run substantially over our time. I wanted to ask one last question as sort of a wrap-up. We are seeing dramatic events in the north. What I have thought, has this disrupted studies, not in getting out there and doing a study, but has it disrupted any of what you have been working on, attitudes? For example, is there a greater Arab identity among the Gulf states, or is there a identity as a region, or even Qataris or Bahrainis? So if we could just sort of 1 minute each per panelist, and then I'm afraid we will have to apologize to the others who wanted to ask questions. Starting here.
I'll make it less than a minute. I study comparative politics, so no is the answer. This hasn't really affected, because I don't study international relations.
Okay.
I guess I would have largely the same answers. I usually agree with Dr. Herb, so that's convenient. But no, I mean, I think it's also very early to know what the knock-on effects will be on domestic politics in particular.
Dr. Dania?
This is quite a fascinating question, and you know, there's a rise of nationalism in the region. So, and it's not Arab nationalism. It's nationalism within the state identity and national identity, which I think in some ways puts the category of, I think, Arab or Khaliji lower down on the list. But what I do see a uniting viewpoint that's emerging across the region is this kind of post-colonial, anti-colonial, anti-Western perspective that's manifesting itself apart from like Arab nationalism or political Islam.
Okay. Dr. Saga?
My answer would be similar to her because I think she did say exactly what was in the back of my mind. So I'll second her opinion.
That is a fascinating commentary. Thank you all very much. A hand for our panelists.
Well, so I am and our whole team at the forum are pleased to announce our first Gulf Studies Symposium Book Award, a recognition celebrating exceptional scholarly works. The award recognizes outstanding contributions to scholarly examination of the Gulf region, highlighting the significant impact of their work on our understanding of economic and political developments in the Gulf. To be honest, it was a very difficult decision for the selection committee. We received an exceptional set of books, each showcasing remarkable talent and dedication to knowledge production on the Gulf region. And I'm very appreciative to the time and effort that came with looking at the different books by our committee, which they're listed in the agenda booklet. After thorough review, deliberation, and voting, the committee has made its final selections, and we're pleased to announce 2 recipients of the 2024 Gulf Book Award. Our first award in the political studies is going to be in political studies, and I want to say these are only books that were published in 2023. So next year we'll have the 2024 award. And the winner of this book award is Dr. Christian Coates Ulrichsen. His book on centers of power in the Arab Gulf states, which was published by Hearst and Oxford University Press. Christian Ulrichsen is a distinguished scholar, renowned for his expertise in Gulf politics, economics, and security, with a wealth of publications, including books, articles, and reports. He delves into various aspects of Gulf affairs, from political dynamics to energy issues. Dr. Ulrichsen's insightful analysis and deep comprehension of Gulf complexities have really earned him widespread recognition and praise. His contribution to academic journals, outlets, and many other places have been invaluable insights on expertise, and he's held so many esteemed positions. He's currently at the Rice University's Baker Institute, and of course, his most important position as a senior non-resident fellow at Gulf International Forum. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. Christian Ulrichsen to the stage for his award. Okay. So here you go, Dr. Christian Ulrichsen.
Thank you.
Would you like to say something? Really quick.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. I mean, this is incredibly generous and kind, and I appreciate it coming from my peers. I had wanted this to be my mid-career book. We've all been talking about how long we've been working on the Gulf, and in my case, it's been 20 years now. And so I wanted this to be a statement of, this is where I've ended up, this is what I've learned so far. It's a lifelong journey, as we all know. And when I come to write my end-of-career book in another 20 years, with the energy transition and 2050 approaching, it'll be very different still. But looking and building on the panel discussion we just had now, I really tried to get beyond oil, looking beyond rentier state theory, looking at the Gulf on its own terms, looking at the historical and comparative issues that shaped the development of the region as we know it today. And so I very much hope I've succeeded. I am also blown away by the depth of talent among the younger, newer generation of scholars coming through. It's incredible, and I think really the field is in incredibly good shape and in good hands for that next generation. So thank you so much.
Thank you. My book was published last year, but it's disqualified from winning any awards. Creative Insecurity on the Gulf. But anyways, we actually have a second book. Unfortunately, the awardee was not able to make it today, but this is focused on the economic studies category. It goes to Dr. Karen Young. The book is titled The Economic Statecraft of the Gulf Arab States, Deploying Aid, Investments, and Development Across MENA. It's published by IB Tauris or Bloomsbury, and it's part of the Middle East series with the Middle East Institute as well. Just a little bit about Karen. She's a highly esteemed scholar whose expertise in the fields of Gulf economics, finance, and political economy has earned her widespread recognition through her prolific writing, insightful analysis, and engaging in presentations. She has significantly contributed to our understanding of economic trends and dynamics in the Gulf. Her work is characterized by its depth, clarity, relevance, making her a trusted authority in the field. She's held positions in various institutions like the Middle East Institute, the London School of Economics, and now she's at Columbia. And she's a leading voice in Gulf studies, inspiring, informing scholars and policymakers. And I will give her trophy on another occasion. Thank you so much.